Alright, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and the continuation of our TNT's Tuesday Night Titans review series. This is the October 30th, 1984 review, and hopefully everything from this series is still fitting nicely into a playlist. You can go check all those out. We appreciate you. We appreciate your continued support. After this series, we are doing Saturday night's main event. We will be going back to Smoky Mountain at some point. But anyway, like, subscribe, comment, and do all that good stuff. We are trying to get subscriber count up to 1,000 as quick as possible so we can donate to those in need from COVID relief. So if you can help with that, that's good too. Anyway, we open with Sergeant Slaughter discussing the Cobra Corps, and he talks about it being the most intense training ever, won't admit to where it's located, says that he's found people who are good soldiers, but nobody that he would have join wrestling, almost as if to say wrestling's harder than military training. Again, I'm not into the whole USA over-the-top patriotism stuff, so Slaughter's deal never clicked with me. I get it. It's just not, not for me. He goes into a second segment where he's over the top with his patriotism towards the Iron Sheik, which obviously leads to a series between those two, culminating in a boot camp match in, I believe it was May or June of '84, at the Garden. Talks about Nikita Volkov. Koloff and Slaughter never met, to my knowledge, although I think that might have been fun. I actually wish Nikita had come in the 80s to WWF. I think that could have been a shot in the arm for an extra heel. But anyway, then we go off to Charlie Fulton versus Slaughter. Fulton, who is predominantly known as a tag team of the Fultons, I think the original Fantastics too, wrestle Southern Lee, but here is young and trying to get his druthers. Does some good mat wrestling. Slaughter, however, does come up with clotheslines, which I think they call some sort of missile or something, and the Cobra Clutch victory for Slaughter. Obviously, very one-sided. That's what's to be there. Slaughter talks about being for the fans, wanting to be a role model. He talks about being given a pair of, I guess, I don't want to call them see-through, but kind of transparent, translucent sunglasses by a young fan who had some disabilities, and that he wants everyone to pay attention to this. So then we go to a completely wrestle crap-rific segment. Brutus Beefcake, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the Butcher, the Barber, the Booty Babe, or the Booty Man, the man with no name, the Zodiac, the Butcher, the everything he is also at this point a male stripper or mock stripper, and it is what you would think. Campy music, Beefcake dancing and gyrating all over the place. It's awkward as heck. Johnny Valiant is endorsing this. Valiant makes it appear that Beefcake is the future of wrestling. Obviously, people know, or I think people would know, that Beefcake's involvement with Hulk Hogan in a friendship that goes back to their time in Alabama and the Gulf Coast in the 70s, 1978 or 79 specifically, has to have a lot to do with him getting brought in here. Now, I'm not saying the guy's talentless, please don't misunderstand me. I've been in small arenas and high school gyms and bars and whatnot where Beefcake has performed 20 years ago, and he had an audience. But for as many opportunities as this guy got, and as many opportunities as many other people don't get, wow, favoritism, nepotism, show, showing of favoritism, and all that stuff, such a major, major part of what happens here. Obviously, the interview process is all Johnny Valiant. Valiant is a really good interview. Surprised he didn't last longer in wrestling. I don't remember quite what he did when he got out in the late '80s, but he certainly put Beefcake over really strong as kind of almost, I'd say, a predecessor to the Rick Rude character in a lot of ways. Not as pronounced with the gyrations and such, but it's if Rick Rude was a no nonsense brawler, the original British Beefcake character to me is a lot of what it would look like. Then we move into the um, the Beefcake versus Tony Garea match from October 22nd of '84 from Madison Square Garden. Match is clipped, but as imagined, Beefcake takes the majority of the match, using some submission holds, using predominantly power moves. Not using, I don't remember him using the sleeper S predominantly quite yet. Obviously, he's going to go through the Dream Team run in late '85 into '86 through WrestleMania 2 and beyond. Obviously, he's predominantly known as with the Barber gimmick '87 to '92, with a stopover for his injury in 1990, summer of '90, with the parasailing accident. But suffice to say, Beefcake spending a good bit of time finding himself here, and really doesn't find himself until that babyface run. Well, maybe he does as a tag guy, but actually, yeah, the Dream Team thing during '85, '86 is pretty cool. And if you want to see the genesis of Brutus Beefcake, one of the, iconic guys from the mid to late '80s into the early '90s, this is the beginning of that, and it's interesting to look back on, to say the very least. The only thing he says in his interview is his name, and that's after being repeatedly coached by Johnny Valiant. And then we move to a segment with the predominantly dominant Big John Studd. Studd uses power, bear hugs, backbreakers, and all of those things. They are beginning to strongly hype Studd as a giant. They are also beginning to strongly hype Studd as a guy who, is going to be in a clash with Andre the Giant. Obviously, this is months before the WrestleMania 1 $15,000 Body Slam Challenge, but that is even teased as early as the end of October of '84. Now, think about that. Let's round that off and call it November just for easy math. November, December, January, February, March. 5 months build to the WrestleMania match, and they're putting it in motion. Obviously, there's the haircutting angle, which we will talk about in the interim, but suffice to say, that's a big deal. And there have been a couple comments that I've received in DM boxes on Twitter and a couple messages on YouTube about why I'm not more detailed with the blow-by-blow of these matches. And the answer is most of them are clipped when I have a show that is more competitive matches and the outcomes are less predictable. Getting into the blow-by-blow and the psychology will be something I'll do. But I mean, John Studd and S.G. Jones, I don't think anybody thinks SG is going to win. Certainly in 1984, maybe even in 1975, I don't think he would have won either. But suffice to say, not really worth going blow by blow in those. Valiant then does a advice to the Lovelorn type segment. relatively skippable. Junkyard Dog out. He's talking about being a fighter, being from down home. Talks about eating hog maws and chitlins and all sorts of really deep southern foods. I think he mentions chickpeas and other collard greens. I know he mentioned those. He basically talks about his diet and how that served him for an extended period of time. Um, he has a really unique voice, and when I say voice, I mean vocal styling, but also he's got a really unique delivery style here. This is before his health starts to take off. Interestingly enough, we see him wrestle a short match where he dominates with power moves. One Paul the Butcher Vachon, and Paul Vachon is used in the wedding angle. And I'll tell you, when we get to the final TNT of the year, I do skip the TNT review for 1984 because everything that's highlighted there is highlighted here already in previous reviews. But the wedding show, that is just awful. I did a lot of skipping through it. It's not going to be as comprehensive a review as normal because it's just, I struggled to get through that 90 minutes just because it was that bad. In any event, JYD tastes some food that he's made. Then we hear from a retired Baron, Mikhail Cicluna. Cicluna is a mainstay in the WWF. He talks about, being one of the more tenured guys in the area and how hard it was on his body and how he relishes the opportunities to travel he was given and how he was a big part of the WWF coming into being and all those things. By this point, though, he's phased out. I don't remember, but I think he was in one of the early 90s original Hall of Fame classes. I know 93 couldn't be it because that was just Andre the Giant. But 94, 95, 96, somewhere in there, I know he was in an early Hall of Fame class just because of the tenure. And there's a couple forums I'm a member of. I think he actually at one point, for a while, an extended period of time, had one of the most matches under the WWF/WWF banner with something like 2,500 matches for the company and was the lead guy for a while. I think he's still like in the top 7 or 8 people all time. Anyone interested can look that out. But I mean, that shows dedication. And I mean, we're talking Hogan, Flair, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, John Cena, and all these guys, and he's still in the top 7 or 8 guys even today. So that shows you his level of dedication. Then we move to a highlight package with the Iron Sheik and Volkov. Man, I'll tell you, I mean, there's nothing really notable here other than one thing, and it is two things. Number one, the viciousness with which the Iron Sheik puts on that camel clutch. Man, he goes to town on some people. And secondly, if you've never seen the backbreaker from Nikolai Volkov, he muscles people into position for that. If you are a power wrestler and you need to look at how to execute a power move, steal from Volkov when it comes to just herking people around and hucking them around. Steal from him when it comes to facial expressions when doing this. Just so much to learn from the guy. And he's a guy who didn't have a lot of moves, but what he did, he made look great. And I think that's important. I would rather, as a future promoter and former commentator, I'd rather see a guy with 10 moves he can do well than 50 moves he does halfway. That's just me. But Volkov here really owns the backbreaker. Anyway, that'll close our review for today. Nothing really worth going out of your way to see. Let me just go back really quickly, see if there's anything that that I missed or anything like that. you can go back and check out stud. Well, actually, there is one thing I missed in the stud thing, and that is um, the story of the stud match included being headbutted several times. I mean, just boom and boom and boom, and he's bleeding from headbutts. Imagine if that happened today. I mean, that's always not made sense to me anyway. I've been in a couple of fights and been assaulted by as a kid by my biological parents and been headbutted, and it never ended without at least a trickle of blood. So I've never understood wrestling where there isn't blood involved in a headbutt, but that's just that's a small thing for me. But anyhow, uh, in any event, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.